We're now ready to talk about Stringer at some more length. So, what is Stringer? Glue is made really just to create strings, and those strings are really useful, as we'll see later, for various purposes, glue for string creation, that is. But Stringer is really the package that's going to be doing the manipulation on strings in R. And again, it's a tidyverse package, okay? It's going to follow a tidyverse package that is somewhat conventional, but is certainly not held across the tidyverse, and that is that almost all functions in Stringer begin with str underscore. That may feel a little strange because it's playing a role kind of like dereferencing, right? It's almost as if we're using Stringer : every time to make sure that we're not colliding with names in other packages. In other words, there's a function here, for example, called pad or match. Well, strpad, strmatch. Those are very, very common function names, and they could exist in many other packages in the R language or in base R. Okay. As a consequence, Stringer, if it wanted to define a function with that name, it would very likely name conflict. Okay, so what it does is all of its functions, or almost all of its functions, start with str underscore. And as I said, so it's kind of like saying you got to say the package name : each time to just say, hey, it's this function from this package. Okay, but that's just not how Stringer does it. Instead, Stringer says str underscore. There are a few other packages in the tidyverse like this. The one that comes immediately to mind is forcats. In forcats begins with fct underscore. So it's for factors, right? So fct underscore, Stringer str underscore. And that's going to be true for almost all of the functions, as you can see in the package, okay? Now, Stringer functions, this is kind of interesting. The functionality that Stringer provides is actually largely already available in base R by different names. And I'll show you that kind of at length a little bit later on when I show you a dictionary that kind of goes back and forth between Stringer functions and base R functions. However, Stringer is actually not its own native implementation of a string processing engine, okay? Stringer is using another package called Stringy, okay? And Stringy is actually wrapping a lower level C++ library called Stringy that is a string processing library. It's very fast because it's written at the C level, so it's compiled, and it's just about as fast as you can get, okay? It also provides a whole bunch of string manipulation features. So let me kind of recap this because it's kind of confusing. So there is a C++ library that you could use totally outside of the R world called Stringy that would do string processing, okay? However, there's also a package in the R language that allows you to interface with that C library, okay? What's kind of odd here is that Stringer, all of the Stringer functions, are actually just wrapping the Stringy functions in the R package that already exists, okay? So the intention, I guess, is to try to kind of smooth it out a little bit more to make it a little bit more tidyverse-like than just Stringy is by itself, okay? But you could certainly use Stringy by itself and it would work just fine, okay? So the names are not quite as intuitive as the tidyverse would like to provide and so on, so that's why you get Stringer, okay? Stringer is going to systematize these base functions or the Stringy functions. So as I said, base functions, you're going to see that they're named and their names are kind of all over the place. A lot of their names are actually coming from the analogous Linux command line tool that would do that task. So for example, we met grep when we were talking about the Linux command line, which is going to find lines that have certain string matches. Well, base R has a function that does that as well, and it's just called grep, okay? And if you're not familiar with that, it gets very confusing. So Stringer kind of systematizes this and makes it a little bit easier. You don't need to know grep or grepl or regexpr or gregexpr or anything like that. You can now just know the new ones that are going to come in for these. As I said, I'll show you a chart later that kind of goes back and forth. Okay. The last thing that I want to say about Stringer before we move on to the next video is that there is a cheat sheet online that you can find that RStudio created that is very, very useful, like the rest of RStudio's cheat sheets, when you're just getting into something, okay? So I would encourage you to find this, this cheat sheet online. It's just a PDF, 2 pages, print it out front and back, and just kind of keep it handy when you're starting to do string processing. Over time, you won't need it anymore. You may keep it as a reference and look back to it from time to time for little eccentric things, but generally speaking, you'll kind of have all of it in your mind, and you won't need that crutch. However, at the beginning, I strongly encourage you to go out, get that cheat sheet, print it out, and kind of keep it right next to you while you're getting used to things. With that, let's move on.